Today's shop project is we're going to replace the countershaft sprocket on our Rd400. On our channel previously, we have replaced the carburetors, we've done tune-up work, we've done fine-tuning, jetting, replaced mufflers, restored parts, did a complete paint job. We've got a lot of time and energy invested in this evil twin project as it's gone on. We've made seats for it. We've replaced the headlight with an upgraded one. But this is going to be a very simple change, but it's a big one. Now, we have been waiting patiently for a rainy day. We've had a lot of nice riding days recently, and we did get a lot of miles. But today, our project is we have an 18-tooth counter sprocket. We want to install it on the RD. It's a relatively straightforward job. It's not a big deal to do it. In fact, it's probably not even as big as I'm imagining, but there's pitfalls. When you go to a bigger sprocket in the front, it could be that you're going to run out of chain adjustment. I don't know until we try, and I'll have to make the chain longer by adding a link or replace the chain or whatever. Who knows? These are all little pitfalls you got to think of ahead of time. Now, the gearing on any bike, of course, is a total compromise. Drag racing, you want this to be as small as possible. Road racing, bigger. And in the case of the RD, what I'm trying to accomplish is we have to go 30 miles to our dedicated riding area and our loops that go around that area. So to get there, it's 30 miles and 30 miles back, and basically on highways where you're going 70, 75. This will cut down on the vibration, some cut down on the engine wear, maybe add a little mileage, not that that's ever a factor with a two-stroke. But this is one thing. I've had other gearing on the bike, and I always went back to stock. Well, now I want to try one over stock. Again, it's a relatively straightforward change. And I'll detail this and try not to leave out any steps for anybody looking to do the exact same job. So the part itself comes from Sprocket Specialties, and their phone number is, they are in Utah, 800-782-8200. So the first thing, as always, is you want to know what chain you have on the bike. Now, typically an Rd400 would have a 530 chain. But I know some people that have converted them over. Race bikes have 520s and whatever. But this is a case hardened steel. It's about 30 bucks, with it includes the shipping, of course, and comes in a sealed package. It's noted what number it is. This is a 527, so I guess so you can replace it or reference it if you wanted to have a smaller sprocket, a bigger one, or whatever. But it's always a compromise. It's never like one sprocket will do it all. The same sprocket that would work under certain conditions, not going to work under other conditions. But a bigger front sprocket is going to cut down the RPM, and again, do the things I would like it to do. It's worth a try for 30 bucks, and if I don't like it, just put the stock one back on. So step one, as we always have to do, is feed the barnyard animals. We don't have to worry about watering today. It is pouring out there right now. But I've got to move the bikes around in such a way that I can get conveniently at the counter sprocket and have the bike up on a center stand. Now, it really gets crowded here on a rainy day when I can't push the bikes outside. Well, certainly nothing we can't live without. But we got this bike in position since basically we're only going to have to work on this side of the bike. So step one is to get the Allen wrench. I need to take the shifter off the side covers to expose the countershaft sprocket. And this is what we're looking forward to the next 24 hours. Now, on a rainy day, the birds don't seem to matter. They eat whether it's raining or not raining. The straightforward thing is one bolt holding the shifter on. Once we get the shifter off, and we'll be able to get all the other bolts. The reason these things get a little snippy to take off is because I have everything Loctited on this bike. And that's a good idea with any two-stroke. The 400 vibrates a whole lot less than the 350, but they still vibrate. Okay, once that bolt is removed, shifter comes right off. Now, removing the side cases, pretty straightforward. It's a good idea if you're not familiar with doing this. Keep the bolts where they go in the same pattern. Some are longer, some are shorter. Just a nice little tip if you need to do that. Since I don't work on this bike on a regular basis, and we did a lot of work last year, we put brand new carburetors, and by the way, that's a very interesting video if you're thinking about upgrading your 400 to newer carburetors. That's an interesting video, that's all I can say. And these wrenches, by the way, from Harbor Freight worked out great. Again, anything I can do to upgrade my tools for a few bucks, always worth doing. And that exposes all the timing and all the ignition system. Now, all the bolt removal, I tend to just go around in a circle and put the bolts in that sequence. And then I know, as an example, I know this one, I don't have to spend the whole day figuring out. The short one goes right in the beginning. As again, some of them are different lengths. And we have had this apart several times. I have changed the counter sprocket. When I first bought the bike, I put less teeth on. Wasn't making a drag bike, so that didn't work out the way I wanted it to. I wound up putting the stock one back on, and I think at one point in time I had other ones that Luciano gave me, but again, I'm not sure. We're going to find out one way or another. A pretty straightforward job. The biggest part of this job is going to be cleaning up the goop. Now, and it depends on, now this is not the chain that came with the bike, of course. This has been replaced about 5,000 miles ago. So what happens if this chain is it can be too short, and I may have to add a link. Now, that's something you have to take into account, because when you do these kind of things, a lot of times, if you go in the other direction, you run out of adjustment the other way. You never know. Again, these are old bikes, and that's what makes these things so challenging. When you see somebody has an RD that's running good, you know they suffered. Now when this comes off, it's still attached to the cable. I'm going to leave that on. I'll see if I can leave it on anyway. And I remember, now I cleaned this all up not that long ago, so it shouldn't really be a problem. So I need to get some way of just zip tying this up out of the way. This is a really good tip. Just tie it up out of the way, then you don't have to disconnect this. Now because I cleaned this recently, we were working on the ignition. That's all pretty nice and clean. That'll save me a lot of, usually a big part of this job is taking care of that. Now, on some bikes, I want to mention this. On some bikes, when you go to put a bigger sprocket in, there's an interference thing now. I don't know that this is going to work. Maybe you can't use this on this bike, on this model. I don't know. The guy at the sprocket place didn't even seem to know. He was asking me. So here's the other thing. If it doesn't work, we just put it back to stock. But then we would be able to share that information that this isn't going to work. So shame on me. But anyway, so you can see that what happens is, and I don't know where we are on the chain adjustment, but to put a bigger sprocket, we're going to have to go further forward. And, well, the first thing we have to do is get the old sprocket off. So you need to take this tang, bend that tang up, and then sometimes here's the tricks you need to have. Sometimes you can use an air hammer. If you have a friend, he can stand on the back brake. You can stuff a rag, usually in the counter sprocket and the real sprocket in the back. Just stuff a big rag that you're going to throw away when you're done. And that kind of locks this up, and then you can get a breaker bar on there. Again, we'll see how tough that is to get off. To get this flat so you can turn a nut. This, of course, locks it in place. Okay, so now that's nice and flat. Now I can get the wrench and the breaker bar and see if it's our lucky day, or if we're going to have to go to the nuclear options. This is pretty funny. The same wrench, exact wrench, fits the R1. It's a 32 millimeter. So what I did, I just stuffed an old rag in by the sprocket. I don't know if that's going to do it. You never really know until you go to do these things. Let's see, we got to get that rag, put the seat in there. You don't want to jam a screwdriver or a pair of pliers or something in there either. And of course the best thing is to just have a helper. Alright, so at some point in time, that's not going to, I need a bigger rag. Hard to believe, huh? Because we don't have a helper, putting the bike in gear, of course, will help. Now, it would be really nice if we had some way, somebody to step on the brake, but we don't. And we're going to have to use rags, I'm assuming, but I don't know for sure. So we're going to find out. This is really on there, and I've got to, there we go. I've got to get I had a rag on both sides of it to get this loose. The worst happens is I got to build up the air in the compressor and use the air hammer to get it off, but yeah, we're off now. But it can be challenging, but it's always good if you have somebody step on a brake, put it in gear, and put the last thing rags, and the last thing, of course, you can use the air hammer. So with the nut off, I think we're going to take a little coffee break here. That's exhausting work, getting that nut off. Alright, so after a nice coffee break, I want to clean this up just a little bit. It is relatively clean now, I'm amazed. But I do remember when we did the ignition work on this, we did clean this all up. Now I'm going to have to loosen the swing arm, slide the swing arm as far forward as it'll go, because this new sprocket is going to be bigger than the old one. So I've got to do that, and this is the original one. So we won't really know until actually we need to get off the we need to get the swing arm as far forward as possible, and that'll for sure shorten the wheelbase a little bit. For right now, I've got to do the other side, and I've got to slide that axle as far forward as possible, and then that'll tell me if I have to add a link, replace the chain, whatever. Alright, that's going to allow me to move the swing arm as far forward. I got the bolts backed out. I can push this as far forward and see if it's our lucky day. Once the first stud is removed, then the second one releases the swinging arm. And with that, I should be able to slide the swing arm forward. It just makes it a lot easier if you loosen that at the bottom. It just lets the swing arm slide up with a lot less resistance. And this is the kind of thing where I want to get as far forward as I can. Now this is the kind of thing, if you had a helper here, it would really be nice. Just to make this go a little easier, but I think we'll be able to get it. It looks like we got enough slack in the chain. I just don't want to force anything. And maybe what I have to do here is loosen, put it in neutral, because I have to be able to turn it. It'll make it a little bit easier to get it up on a spline without getting my finger caught in there. So it looks like it's my lucky day. We don't have an interference what I thought we might. We got plenty of slack. We'll take the slack out of the chain, of course. We have these adjusted all the way forward. Next thing is to get that nut on and get it torqued down and get that little retaining washer on. So far, so good. So what we know now is that 18 tooth will fit on this, and that's not going to be a problem. So I'm kind of thinking it might be our lucky day. The only problem here, we're not going to be able to get any kind of a test ride today because it is pouring out there. It is just like a storm. Anyway, now I need, let's get this. Now for right now, I'm just going to make this hand tight until I can get the chain adjusted. Now once I adjust the chain, and I'll put the rags back in appropriate spot, tighten that down. But the next thing is to get the chain adjusted and hook up the little the bar that goes on the bottom of the brake stay. I got to remember to get that cotter pin on this when this is tight. So we have the rag in there. I hope that's going to be enough. I'm going to find out. The next step is just to bend that tab back over, and that, even though we've got a tremendous amount of torque on that wrench, on that nut, we want that tab bent over. That's the safety, like the safety wire, and we can pull a rag out. Well, let me get this tab down before I pull that rag out. And with that tab is bent back down. We are good to go. The only thing left here is to adjust the chain, put the side back on the motor. So the last thing here is put this side cover back on. And there's some grease fittings in here. While I have this apart, I want to grease it. So the job went pretty uneventfully. I didn't think there was any major things that you would have to know, other than the obvious thing: make sure the nut is tight, it's peened over, chain is adjusted, and there's a little clip on the bottom, a little Jesus clip that goes like a cotter pin, goes in the bottom brace. Other than that, pretty straightforward job. And it does look like an 18 countershaft fits right on there, and in our case, didn't need to add any links to the chain. So it's good, and even better. So I want to thank the healthcare workers. Thank you guys one and all. So good to be getting over the end of this virus. I hope we're over the end of it very soon. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks so much for watching. So if you're new to the channel, we do try to share the rides we go on, 2-stroke and 4-stroke, and we do try to do some little maintenance projects as backyards mechanics that we are. We make carbon fiber parts, we do custom painting, and most of all we try to share the information that we have accumulated over about 60 years of working on motorcycles. So, and we like to share it with everybody, especially our friends. So again, I hope you did enjoy our channel, our presentation, and thank you guys so much for watching. And we try to post some new video every day, so maybe we'll see you tomorrow.